Hello there, and welcome to one of the very first video elements in Dancing at the Edge. This is an introductory course that we're producing through the website called livingresilience.net and our programs offering called Deep Academy. And this is really meant to be an introduction to the collapse-aware conversation and collapse-aware community around the world, a loosely knit, very few people at this point around the world who would consider themselves collapse-aware, meaning that we've all gotten ourselves here by realizing to one degree or another, we're in the presence of human-caused collapse of Earth and human systems. And for some people, that's a brand new distinction, brand new experience, and it's can be quite daunting. It can be quite a lonely and scary experience, especially in those first few days, weeks, months of realizing what's going on. And this is also meant to be an introduction for people who've been around the block, who really have been involved with the collapse-aware conversation for up to decades. And as difficult as that certainly sounds to me, to try and put together something that's useful for someone who's brand new and someone who's been around quite a while, I'm very pleased to say that I think we've got some good elements in place to be of support and resources to people who are engaging in this way, beginner or long time engaged person. And I'm thrilled to be doing this project with my associate and ally and good friend from the Deep Adaptation Forum, the organization, the platform online that was made available by Jem Bendell, the man who coined the phrase deep adaptation a couple of years ago. I'm very pleased to have Matthew Painton here. So Matthew, yay, we're doing this together.
That's right. Thanks, Steve.
And you know what I've asked Matthew to do with me today is to help to just put it together a very basic mapping of what often gets a person here, what sort of understandings of what's actually going on in the world and what got us here. And so what do we do now, kind of a thing. So I'm curious, Matthew, would you be willing to start us out with just a few words about what's a shorthand way of describing what's going on?
The way I see it, we're immersed in an ecocidal, omnidestructive system. Like it or not, we're all in it. We're nodes in that system. But for an increasing number of us, this global predicament is trying to surface in our being. And that's triggering. There's not space in our business as usual being. There's not capacity to surface something like a global predicament.
So hang on a second. You're using a word a couple times now that I'm curious if you would just give us a little bit of distinction about it. So a predicament, what do you mean by using that rather than problem or challenge or whatever other choices we might have?
It's a predicament is a problem without a solution.
Yeah.
And you know, globally, we start to look at the global situation and by degrees become aware that it's a predicament, that there's no solution on the table.
Yeah.
It's something we have to weather. It's something we have to endure.
And that might be where Jem Bendell came up with his term about deep adaptation, because that's another way that we can approach something as daunting as a predicament, is to start to look at, so how do I adapt? How do we adapt together to this thing that offers no solution?
Yeah. And is so immense that it just overwhelms our personal being.
Yeah.
It's too big, it's too much, and can lead us to this sort of powerless nihilism.
Right. I appreciate you bringing up that particular point, because one of the kind of phrases that keeps me on track when we're doing this work is that a major focus of this work, from my perspective, is to help us to expand our capacity to be truly present in the face of that scale of predicament that you're just describing. It's something, we've literally, this is the largest conversation, the largest predicament, the only global predicament that humanity's ever had to face at, this level of reality for this number of people around the planet. And so how I keep myself on track in this work is I need to be engaging with my own practices to keep expanding my capacity to be present when just about every element of that massive wall of predicament wants to just smash it, smash that capacity, just take me out. There aren't too many healthy choices when it's that level of pressure. So there we are. Here we are. We're in a predicament. What got us here?
Yeah. How far back do you want to go? That's
well, not too far back, because I do want, our main audience here, I'm hoping, is people who are familiar enough with, they got some idea of what's going on. We will not be breaking news for people, I think, who are watching here. And so, to me, the real impact of humanity that humanity has had has really exponentially increased in the 20th century. Sure, are there roots before it? Absolutely. And we will, for people who enjoy this work, do sign up for this Dancing at the Edge program and so on, decide, yeah, I want to really engage more deeply and ongoingly. We have deep dive special focus series and conversations and support available to that and many other conversations. But this introductory series will just be touching a bit on each one. So giving a 20th century touch in, and particularly really in the past 50 years, and one could assert that the past 30 to 40 years, humanity, for instance, with regard to certain extinction events and habitat loss events, and most visibly the climate change impact, these past 30 to 40 years have been more than half of our impact in the entire run of humanity. So when I put it in that kind of a frame, what comes to mind about what happened to us, what's been going on, what goes on in our collective system, that we are able to do that while we actually do know what we're doing?
I think to be well adapted in the current paradigm is to be divorced from connection to nature, connection to values, to soul, to spirit, and to emotionality. It requires us to be that way to succeed in business as usual. that's the framing we've got, that's the scaffolding we've got around us. And that civilization has created many marvels, and a very compelling, amazing way of being. You know, the G-jaws, the entertainments of that society are amazing and very, very compelling. But the kind of person it requires us to be is divorced from nature, divorced from spirit, divorced from soul. And we all struggle with that. A lot of us know that there's something wrong, profoundly wrong at every level of our being, but we're immersed in it. There's no option, but to be that way.
I really like the way you just said that, and I made me remember in putting together my book of the impossible conversation that I put out in 2017. I kept asking the simplest questions I could to just get my head around each element, whether it was climate change or species extinction and so on. And they were all so huge, and I am no expert in any of them. So I kept asking the question, what got us into this predicament? And very similar to the words you were just saying, this being divorced from reality, basically we've incentivized in this system that the people who have disconnected from the primary sources of meaning and relationship in life, people who have most efficiently and completely disconnected are the ones we incentivize the most. Look at the CEOs on our planet.
Yeah.
They are the best extractors, and they are the most numb extractors of profit from the commons that have ever been. So we're in a predicament. What got us here is this perversely incentivized system of business as usual, in which the people who are the most disconnected from the primary sources of meaning and relationship in life are these are the most rewarded people on the planet. What's kind of makes me
most
almost
powerful.
Yeah, by far. It makes me a bit ill to be even articulating it this way with you. But this is part of the hard work, the inner work. These are some of the first steps of hard inner work of a person who's become collapse aware. And so then the question, one of those simple questions that I was using to write and research the book, we're in a predicament which offers us no solutions. We've gotten here by disconnecting from the primary sources of meaning and relationship in life. What do we do? Do we just roll over and play dead, or drool on ourselves in the corner, or go to Las Vegas and rack up the credit cards? And I'd actually love to hear how it is for you and the coaching clients and so on that you work with. In my experience, I can count on one hand with fingers left over the number of people who have chosen some sort of giving up, some sort of life isn't worth living. There seems to be this nearly unanimous rallying that happens differently in each of our systems, but it happens, where a person is called to a different kind of presence, a different kind of questions, a different kind of framing of how we're seeing the world starts to show up, different engagement. So that's my experience of the vast majority of people I've worked with. Could you say anything about that?
Yeah, so I mean, from my own experience, 4 years ago, I had a collapse experience. My hope died. I experienced profound anxiety, like a scream in my being, for 6 months. and I was coaching people. You know, I had a reasonably successful coaching business, coaching people into success and well-being within the business as usual paradigm. And I had no heart for that anymore. I couldn't do that anymore. And as I looked around me, I remember thinking, you know, really profoundly, I'm going to be grieving for the rest of my life. I'm going to be in this nihilism, this despair. And yet something in me was reaching for, no, I'm not going to lie down and die. There has to be another way of being. There has to be, at the very least, an enlivenment in this for me. And that's what I found in the deep adaptation network with, you know, and it took some time and practices, you know, and distilling the knowing the best practices that work for me, to regulate myself, to know when I'm sinking back down, how to come back, what works for me.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a remarkable how many times it's not just a resonance between you and me. Parts of the story you've just said have been a part of almost every story I've heard. Yeah. And there's been many.
Yeah.
So my way of shorthand summing up what you've just said is what there is to do if we find ourselves in a predicament, and what appears to be the cause of our having placed ourselves collectively into this predicament is disconnection from deeper self, from other people, earth and soul, you know, those primary sources of meaning and relationship in life. Then what there is to do, if I get out of bed every morning, which I do, and I really care, I really want to do something with this life. In the face of this predicament, I want to do something. The shorthand for it, I would say, is that I gather my own practices of reconnection. And so I've been gathering practices of reconnection really my whole life, particularly intensively in these past 10 to 15 years. The second part, as it relates to this, the reason you and I are doing this video, which is to orient people to this dancing at the edge, this introduction to the collapse aware community and conversation, and is how can we sit in circle? How can we come together with others who, some of whom are brand new to this conversation, and they're could be freaking out, could be like, this is shatters what they thought was normal at every level. Could be people who have been involved with this conversation and practices of reconnection for decades. And how can we have people from such diverse backgrounds and experience sit in circle together and hold space for one another in this, the most difficult conversation in human history? You know, it's asking a lot of us. Again, I think I mentioned this at the very beginning. It's almost impossible to try and do this and have it fit every person's needs who's going to participate. I don't know who'll be successful with that. I kind of doubt it. But we're giving it our best shot to make this as extraordinarily useful and engaging a space holding opportunity for each other as we can generate.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I personally am really looking forward to this because I know that I'm going to learn. You know, I certainly am not the guru figure here, and I know you're not, and that's not our point at all.
Yeah.
Our point is to create a space in which this kind of coming together of a relatively diverse group of people who can hold space for each other and expand our capacities to be present in the face of larger and larger stressors, which really promise to be happening no matter how privileged a country you are coming from. It's going to keep happening more and more as these days and weeks and months go by. Is there anything you're sparked to say out of that?
Yeah, just to sort of reiterate what you've just said, that we cannot surface a global predicament in our own being without overwhelm, panic, fuses blown. But in circle, we can. There's enough space in a circle to start to surface that and process it emotionally, mentally, spiritually, physically.
Yeah.
And it's in these spaces that we create that the predicament gets surfaced in a way that we can respond to meaningfully.
Yeah. Well, I certainly appreciate being able to do this video with you, this introduction to folks who y'all are just starting up this thing, and I hope this is going to be as useful and as valuable and as engaging for you as it seems to already be for me and perhaps for us here. This is the first of a few of the introductory videos, little series to kind of get you ready for the first session. So there might be days or even a couple of weeks before that first session's coming up in the last Saturday in June here in 2021. I just really invite you to go through this series of videos and perhaps go through a couple of them twice. The next one, we're going to be talking about a way to self-assess, the way to really tell the truth about where we are on a scale from completely new and not much capacity for the daunting reality of what's going on the planet in terms of the collapse aware conversation, up through levels of greater and greater systems awareness, greater and greater ability to really open our eyes to a far broader perspective. And I think you're going to find, certainly I've found, that simple self-assessment tool that we're going to be doing in the next video extraordinarily helpful. Remember, I was mentioning that I kept using the simplest possible questions I could to move myself to the next level in writing the book. And similarly, as I'm still and I'll be engaged with my practices of reconnection for the rest of my life. I'm clear on it.
Yeah.
And this simple self-assessment tool of where am I on this spectrum of readiness of openness to the system's view of the world and the system's view of human impact on the world. So stay tuned. That's the preview of coming attractions. And Matthews, thank you so much for taking this time to help me introduce this this particular part of the work.
Yeah, thank you, Dean.